Good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Before I start, I'd like to read the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of the Codwell First Nation of the Three Fires Confederacy and the original people of Point Pelee and Pelee Island and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced this stewardship since time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge the contributions of other nearby First Nation communities and all original people across Turtle Island. At this time, we'll have a moment of silent reflection, and then we'll stand for the playing of our national anthem. Thank you. Members of council, you'd have a chance to look at items on the agenda. Is there any conflict of interest? So noted. Adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held March 8th, 2022 be adopted as presented. Moved by Deputy Mayor Meloche and Councillor Dicio Spagnolo. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Mayor's comments. I have some. Sadly, as many of you have heard or read in the media, tragedy struck our community this week. Our deepest condolences go out to the family and friends of Amanda Lyons as an active investigation continues. We are also thinking of the first responders who were working diligently and tirelessly on the investigation to bring answers to this heartbreaking tragedy. This week, the provincial government removed the mandatory mask mandate as the next step in Ontario's roadmap to reopening. Masks are no longer mandatory at our municipal facilities, but some may choose to continue to wear a mask in these public settings. Please be kind and respectful to those that choose to continue to mask up, as well all adjust and find our comfort level with our new normal. And now I'll ask our CEO, Mr. Militia, to say a few comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, to the viewing audience, again, we'd like to introduce our first hybrid meeting where we'll have, currently we have members of council in the council chambers with a few members of administration, and we have the viewing audience as well as our delegations participating virtually. We will have this on a trial basis for this meeting as well as the upcoming April 12th meeting, after which at the April 26th meeting, we anticipate, provided that conditions continue to improve, that we will be able to have our return to our normal council meeting setup. However, in doing that, we will also provide for the hybrid and virtual options as well. So we look forward to this tonight's meeting as well as the April 12th meeting as we pilot out the hybrid context here. So please, again, for the viewing audience and for those delegations on line with us today, please a little bit of patience because we are working through some of the new bugs that we anticipate through this format. But other than that, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that. And I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Item C1, we have a meeting regarding 2544236 Ontario Inc. as Demore Blaine for development on Martin Lane. And I believe we have Mr. Burgess with us. Mr. Burgess.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. I'm just going to share screen and would just ask if you can see my presentation. Okay, awesome. So again, we have two public meetings this evening. We have two draft plans of subdivision and two rezoning files before us. Files T04-20 and Z08-20 and T03-20 and Z07-20. Our first, these are the locations of the two files. Our first file before us this evening is the application T4 or T-0420 and Z08-20. This is by Ontario Limited 2544-23-6, Ontario Limited. These lands are located north of Dawson Back Drive, east of Front Road, and south of Jewel Street. The proposed draft plan of subdivision contains approximately 60 single detached dwellings, 82 semi-detached dwellings, and as it shows an expansion of the Victory Park, as well as the expansion of the natural area, storm drainage areas, and a stormwater management facility. The proposed development conforms with the PPS, the county official plan, as well as the town of LaSalle's official plan. The proposed zonings that are being proposed for this property are appropriate for the various uses which are being proposed. As a part of the public process, we've had various phone calls, emails, and inquiries from the public regarding this proposed development. Most concerns have been answered via returned phone calls and email addresses. However, there are some other instances where concerns will be addressed by the developer's consultant. The slide that I'm showing you here is the location where Runstedler Drive will interconnect into the existing unopened portion of Dawson Back Drive. This was actually created back when the original Dawson Back subdivision was created, and is shown as being blocks 23 and block 24. Dawson Back Park will remain, and staff will review the location of any of the memorial trees and determine if they need to be, whether they can remain or whether they need to be removed and relocated to more appropriate locations. There are some concerns regarding fencing. The town's current practice with regards to the installation of fencing is primarily for the separation of private and public uses and lands. So for instance, parks, drains, etc. Or when residential developments abut, such as commercial or industrial uses, including parking lots, drive-throughs, etc. As these are all residential use or residential lots being created here, no fences were anticipated or are being recommended, except for in the locations such as where there is the parkland and along the drainage corridors. At this time, I will turn it over to Melanie Muir and Kyle Edmonds from Dillon Consulting for further comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Ms. Muir and Mr. Edmonds.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. We have read the town's report and are in agreement with the recommendations and requests that the applications for rezoning and draft plan approval be approved. The applicant is planning to develop the site for single detached and semi-detached dwellings as shown on the conceptual site plan. The proposed zoning, which is the R1, for the residential portions of the land, the RE for the parklands, which is recreational, and the natural environment for the naturalized area, buffers, and drainage corridors, are in keeping with the PPS and the OP policies and are the same as the neighboring residential properties. We're keeping the same zoning. There is no deviation being requested at this time. As indicated by Mr. Burgess, we understand that there are concerns about privacy and fencing along the existing Dosenbach dwelling units. We would like to assure that the existing homeowners that the proposed dwellings along their rear yards are in keeping with the bylaw, which is the same as their bylaw, and their property, which their properties are under. As per the provisions of the bylaw, no homes can be built taller than 10.5 meters in height, which is about 2 stories or so. The applicant will be adhering to this provision and in conjunction with the required 7.5 meter rear yard setback. All dwellings will be located a minimum of that distance away from those rear yards. We don't see that this is any type of conflict or any nuisance. It's the same type of use as a single detached, a semi-detached, they're all the same. And so we feel that the zoning as requested is appropriate, as well as the request for the fencing at this time, as there's no requirement through the municipality. It will be a responsibility of any future owners to put in fencing if they wish. There as well, we understand that there are some concerns about potentially having some buffers and trees along that rear property line. There are currently no requirements to provide trees along rear yards of these units, as it's not typically something that's required through a zoning or draft plan. There will be a requirement to provide street trees along the right of way, which they are, the applicant is going to adhere to and as per the bylaw and the development standards, but no trees at this time are to be provided in the rear yards, as they're just a new residential use abutting an existing one. There's no difference. As part of the submission package, it should be noted that the stormwater management report, functional servicing report, archaeological assessment, environmental impact assessment, and planning justification reports were submitted. Any recommendations made as a result of these studies have been implemented as part of the design of the subdivision. A TIS report, or a traffic impact statement, has also been recently completed as a result of many of the calls from the local neighbors regarding traffic concerns. The town is in receipt of this report, and the report indicates that traffic levels, which they measure at a level of service for the 4 intersections that were reviewed, are currently operating at acceptable levels and will continue to do so even upon full build out of the development. No traffic signals are warranted as a result of this report. But it should be noted that the southbound left turn lanes on Front Road are warranted under current conditions, but not as a result only of the new development. So there is an issue along Front Road. However, it's a current condition issue, and the town is aware of that. So at this time, I'm not sure if Kyle has anything else to add at this time, but we request that council follow the recommendations of the planning department and approve the applications as put forward.
Thank you, Melanie. Kyle, anything to add?
No, Mr. Mayor, that was quite thorough. Good job, Mel.
Okay. We had some correspondence from some residents. Some may be on the line. Is there anything they would like to add? If so, now's the time. Okay, looks like we have no additional comments from the residents.
Hello?
Oh, we have somebody there.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering if this is the time to discuss the drainage?
Do you have questions regarding drainage?
Yes, I do.
You could ask the representatives from Dillon, sure.
Okay, if you could put back the original slide of the planning. Okay, so there's a blue line going here. As you see, a
Yes,
blue line that is the drainage. I've discussed this with Mr. Osborne, and it is an error here because right here, this to here is blocked, and that's on my property.
okay, let me interrupt you. Ms. Cherry, when you say this to here, who has the cursor? Is that you, Ellen?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if you can highlight that again where she's talking about here to here.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. My,
I'm sorry, Mr. Burgess. This is a drainage ditch by my property.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
but-
and it
but this shows that it's going up to the Martin Bergeron drain. But right here, the ditch on my property is blocked off from here to here. So there's no drainage there.
Okay, Mr.
Okay.
Burgess?
I believe Mr. Edmonds can answer that question.
Okay. Okay,
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that drain, this happens, I think, to be some old GIS mapping that was pulled in. That drain does continue to the east by lots 129, 112, and then come along the rear of lots 112 through 117. That's the new alignment of the Martin Bergeron drain as per the drainage report on bylaw.
Okay, now this drainage that goes, because the ditch behind my property is still there, which goes across here, as I understood. This here shows that drainage is going here. Now, is this drainage down here going to River Canard? Or is all the drain going up to the Martin Bergeron?
The Martin Bergeron drain, as it stands today, is not being adjusted. The only new drainage feature being placed in here is the stormwater management facility, which will take all the stormwater surface runoff from the new development and outlet into the Martin Bergeron drain. So all other lands that border this drain right now will drain as they currently do today.
Okay, so this one here that shows that goes across Martin Lane still goes to River Canard?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
the ultimate outlet is still the same.
Okay, so my concern here is with all these houses, and since we've had some drainage issues and flooding issues, especially on the land where it's going to be developed, what is being done? And as I understand, there's going to be some catch basins put in?
Yeah, so actually stormwater in the area will improve with this development. Currently, right now, whatever storm event lands on the ground goes into this drain, which is sized for smaller series events, and floods the existing lands and any of the border lands. By doing the development here, we'll be piping everything through catch basins and sewers into the stormwater management facility, which has been sized for the regional guidelines that IRCA has set out for urban stress test. So it's basically 140% of the 100-year storm event.
Okay, then how many catch basins are we talking about here? Are they going to be at each house that I was understood that it was
So
going to be?
There'll be a rear yard catch basin placed at each house, which will collect, each lot has to collect and get rid of its own drainage. And nothing to flood onto other properties. So it will all go into the storm system, which will then eventually go to the pond. So there will be one rear yard catch basin at each lot, and then there'll be a series of catch basins throughout the road network.
Okay, and then my last question is, who's responsible for cleaning the catch basins? Because ours haven't been cleaned since they've been installed.
Ultimately, that will fall upon the town of LaSalle after the maintenance period has been cleared for the development.
Okay, since 2010, since we have the catch basins here, like I say, mine is 3/4 full of leaves and crushed stone, but no
Again,
one.
these are only the public right-of-way catch basins that they maintain. Anything on your own private property is the homeowner's responsibility to maintain.
Yeah, that's not on my property. This is through everybody's drain that was put in on the outside of my property.
I'll have to pass that along.
I have a catch basin in the ditch that I own. That hasn't been cleaned either, so I don't know if I'm responsible for that, to clean it. I mean, I can't see that. And also the catch basin in front of my house, which is not on my property. I cut the grass there, but that has never been cleaned.
We have your address on record and we'll have somebody look into that. I can't tell you it's going to be cleaned today or tomorrow, but the proper people are on this video and we'll take notes on that.
I'd appreciate it because my neighbors said the same thing too. So
Okay,
I'm
can I
not
have
the
your address?
only one.
Can I just have your address?
379 Martin Lane,
379 Martin Lane. Okay,
correct.
thank you. Any other comments, Ms. Cherry?
No, that's it. Thank you for answering my questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't see anyone else wanting to ask questions, so I will open up.
Hello,
Sorry, Russ?
yes,
Okay, go ahead, Mr.
I
Hazel.
do have, I canvassed most of the neighbors on our street, north side of Dawsonback. And I've listened to the presentation thus far. Is it a done deal that the developer won't have any obligations to put a uniform fence for privacy for the respect of the current residents on the north side of Dawsonback and our new future neighbors on the street going in behind us?
Mr. Burgess?
I would suggest, and our recommendation would be, is that there would be no fencing installed. However, that would be a decision which council can consider if they feel it's appropriate. But based on our current practice and the what we have done in various developments in probably almost my 30-year career with the municipality, is that we do not install fences between single family or single detached dwellings, and whether they be new or old. It's just not a practice that we've ever followed.
Okay, our position was to ask council to see if council might be able to have some weight in the decision-making process, and that we be afforded at least an opportunity to ask for the fences. And I think that's the consensus of the residents on the north side of Dawsonback.
Mr. Hazel, council is notified of your question, so that'll be up to council to make that decision at tonight's meeting. Do you have any?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hazel. Okay, now I'll open it up to council questions. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. Through you, I guess, possibly to Alan, I'm not quite sure. I was at the February meeting, so most of my questions were already answered. Two questions, I guess. One would be, I know the park is being downsized to its original size, and there is a park dedication area in the new subdivision. Is there an additional park being installed, or will we just have that one? So that's my first question. I don't know if we want to go there first.
Thank you. Through your worship. So I don't know if everyone, oh, sorry, I'm just going to share screen once again. So this is the original Dawsonback parkette. This will remain in its current configuration. The new street will pass by it. As I mentioned in my presentation, there were some concerns about some memorial trees, and we'll verify the location of those and working through with Parks and Rec and to make sure that those trees are either relocated and or repositioned in other locations which are more appropriate. But the proposed park land, which is shown here, which I'm circling with my mouse, that land is the required dedication by the developer. So that's going to expand the existing Victory Park, which is just off screen, just to the north. So basically, I wouldn't say it exactly doubles it, but it pretty near doubles the size of the park that's already there. So it's a substantial increase in the size. In addition to that, there will also be these open green spaces. This is to increase the buffering for the naturalized area. And there's also this green corridor, which will be going through here. So there's substantial open space, which will be as part of this development. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you very much. It does. My second, I guess, statement would be to Mr. Hazel. I did receive his concerns, and I understand what the neighbors are saying and the idea of, you know, new residents being behind you, and unfortunately the lot lines not matching up with each other. But I myself wouldn't be in favor of asking the developer to put in a fence, only because we have several of these developments going on throughout the municipality, and we've never asked our developers to do that before. And they're the same thing being built behind other current homes that have been there for a while. But my last concern is regarding a statement made by Ms. Muir about the left turn lane going onto Front Road and it being a current town issue. Are we addressing that, or what is the plan, knowing that this subdivision could be built rather quickly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the currently right now on Front Road, which is a 4-lane cross section and has a shared left turn lane with a through lane. The thresholds on those for needing left turn lanes are quite sensitive. Right now, we show that at Victory, Jewel, and Martin Lane, there's currently a backup of maybe 12 cars at Victory and Martin Lane, and less than 10 at Jewel. When we include the whole development, both the green and the red development on here into the network, it increases that marginally. You get up to you're less than double the amount of cars in there. So technically, on the Warren side, it meets it. Practically, it won't really affect the operation of the roadway. And also, this section of roadway here from Gary south is actually a county road. So that falls onto the county's jurisdiction for their decision, I guess, to put that in. And it might not be at the top of their priority list right now.
Mr. Mara, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you. Further to Mr. Edmonds' comments regarding Front Road at this location, as he has indicated, this is the county section of Front Road. Through the various approval processes, there really hasn't been any identification from the original Dawson-Bach installation up to including the previous Victory Estates. There really hasn't been any indication of inappropriate and or difficult turning movements there. One of the real difficult sections in here is that there is no right-of-way left. So there, if any improvements need to occur, there is a significant amount of property that's required because the entirety of the right-of-way is filled from property line to property line, which would entail a significant environmental assessment. But again, this section of Front Road does fall under the County of Essex jurisdictions, and we really haven't had any of those indications from the county that improvements are warranted or needed, or this is becoming a significant problem at this location.
Mr. Mara, if I can put it in plain language. So what you're saying is the county has to approve this plan once we approve it. And if they approve it, obviously they have no problems with the traffic at that intersection, correct?
Correct. The county is the road jurisdiction of Front Road, and they would have the opportunity to ask for that those improvements to occur. I don't believe they have asked for it to date for any of these developments. Again, the primary problem here is even if they ask for it, there's just no property to do in it. So it's something that has to be put down as a deficiency. And the next opportunity would be when an environmental assessment is done to identify what those key intersection improvements need to be at various locations by the appropriate property to dealing with those and then implementing the improvements.
Okay, thank you for clarification. Deputy Mayor, more questions? No? Okay. Any other council questions? Councillor Reno and then Councillor Dichos Bagnolo.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question on the same slide, refers to the very bottom right-hand corner of the slide. I believe Mr. Edmonds may be able to answer this. This was brought up in the last meeting. I'm wondering what the width of the green space, both at Martin Lane as well as the wider section behind it. I assume that that green area is all municipally owned. And I just need to know what the depth of those two parcels will be. Are they 15 feet? Are they 30 feet? Is that something you can comment on?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that green space will be municipal owned. Currently, right now, it is municipal drain flows through it, but those have been created into blocks that will be passed along to municipality. The section behind the homes 112 to 117, that is roughly about 10 meters. And then the other section at the south is about just over 3 meters.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Di Spagnolo.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Burgess. I just wanted to ask, is the developer going to be installing a sidewalk or 2 sidewalks on either side?
Sorry, through you, your worship. Sidewalks will be built on actually on both sides of the street of all streets. And throughout the development. And I would ask with regards to through Dawson back, I believe they will also be continued down and linking to the Martin Lane pathway.
Any other questions? Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just, Alan, that last little bit, I just need clarification. So I understand we're going to have sidewalks on both sides of the streets, which is what we do. But when you say that it's going to continue down, is this going to be affecting property owners that are currently on title as to not have a sidewalk? Or can you explain how that's going to play out?
Through your worship, it's my understanding that the sidewalk would be extended down along the side of both the existing properties on either side of the Dawson back drive properties, both the corner lot here in front of the park and along the side within the right of way. As you can see, there is a very widened right of way. So I would believe that there would be an appropriate space for that sidewalk. And I would ask Mr. Evans, maybe he can note what he's proposed on his proposed engineering drawings.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the sidewalks will be extended down to Martin Lane through the existing right-of-ways. So we will not be crossing any existing driveways or crossing existing lots. They'll all be along the flankage of those lots. And we'll also at the same time be relocating the existing mailbox to a location slightly north of where it is. And putting a sidewalk right adjacent to the mailbox for better access.
Okay, thank you. And that clears up a lot. And I like to see that the sidewalk will be going in front of the park, because one of the things that was asked in a few of the comments was that they wanted to protect the kids. And I think that sidewalk will provide a little bit of buffer. So thank you very much for thinking of that.
Just for the record, I go to that park often with my granddaughter, and there is a sidewalk on the east side of Dawson back up to the park. So they'll be extending it on the east side just from the park up to, I guess, Dawson back in the first, whatever that street's going to be named. So there is a sidewalk on the east side, nothing on the west. Okay, council's pleasure. Deputy Mayor Meloche.
Move the recommendation.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Meloche, support. Councillor Reno, I see your hand only because I see it in my sight. This is our first meeting viewing audience on in chamber. So support by Councillor Reno. Discussion on the motion? None, all in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Before we go to C2, I just want to acknowledge I made a boo-boo and did not notice that, I did notice, but I didn't state Councillor Desjardins and Councillor Carrick are absent this evening. They couldn't attend tonight's meeting. Now we'll go to C2 QD developments. And I'm guessing Ms. Muir, you're up again.
Well, actually, I'll start.
Okay, go ahead.
No problem, Your Worship. So the second draft plan of subdivision before us tonight is for QD developments. It's for Martin Lane. It's file Z07-20 and T file 03-20. This proposed development will contain approximately 45 single detached and 32 semi-detached dwelling units. And actually, it will also be dedicating approximately 8 hectares of land for natural heritage and natural buffering. The proposed development conforms with the PPS, the county official plan, and the municipality's official plan. The proposed zoning is appropriate for the various land uses which will be occurring on the property. As you can see here, there is significant lands being dedicated with regards to natural heritage, and which was one of the concerns which was raised by one of our residents. Based on the original notices, they were concerned of how much of this area would be developed, and you can see that a substantial amount of the land will be maintained and be put into municipal ownership. One of the other concerns which was raised was with regards to noise as it relates to the existing ETR railway and the existing farm operation, which is directly beside this property. In order to address those concerns, there will be building restrictions placed on the units abutting these facilities. There will be additional fencing and noise acknowledgements so that future owners and future residents are aware of the existing conditions and recognize the continued operations of those facilities and operations. In addition to the lands which you see here, which is being dedicated for natural heritage purposes, the owner, as part of a approval or a permit through the Ministry of the Environment, Parks and Conservation, is seeking to basically acquire this piece of land on Kelly Road. It's approximately 4 hectares in size. It will be naturalized and dedicated to the municipality. As a benefit, this provides access to our existing municipal storms pond. There's an existing naturalized bush and the municipal drain. And at this point, I would turn it over to Ms. Muir and Mr. Evans for further comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess.
Through you, Your Worship, once again, it's pretty much the same presentation, so I'm not going to repeat myself. It's exactly the same as the other one. We're going for the R1 zoning, which is in keeping with the surrounding land uses and now the adjacent property that's just recently you approved. As part of the submission package, as Alan mentioned, we did complete a noise assessment as well as a stormwater management report, functional servicing, archaeological, environmental impact assessment, and planning justification report. The TIS that was completed was also part, it was jointly completed for both this one and the adjacent property. And you know the results. Once again, we'll provide the street trees. As part of the noise assessment, there will be fencing required along the one portion on the east side, just to allow for reduction of any potential noise issues. They will also be including clauses in the offers of purchase and sale and to be registered on title regarding any potential noise concerns. But overall, the noise report was supportive of the development with these requirements. Also, just to add, there's also the requirement for air conditioning and those the usual units that we would have in our most homes down here. So it's not over and above what is typically required. Central air is normal down in the Windsor, Essex County area. So it's also required. And like Alan mentioned, we are working to obtain a C permit through MECP, and with the dedication of the offsite compensation. There is a significant amount of land being provided as a naturalized area, and they're maintaining additional buffers along as well to promote and protect any natural features that are in those areas. So, and I think the only other thing would be that the stormwater management is a joint system. It may be on the neighboring property, but it has taken account and is being utilized as well by this development. And Kyle can add to that if there's anything else.
Thank you, Melanie. Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the stormwater management facility, you'll notice there is nothing on this site. It has been incorporated into a regional facility, which is on the adjacent property, which does also include lands south, the lands fronting Martin Lane. As part of an EA that was done earlier, 300 feet back, there was a line set, and those lands were included in that pond. So again, that pond is sized for both developments to take all the regional storm events that it needs to be designed for.
Okay, before we go to council, we still have two residents that spoke in relation to the first development. I don't believe this one affects them, so I'll just go to them first. If there's any questions they have pertaining to this development. I don't think so. Okay, so I'll open it up to council. Council questions. Seeing none, I have one, Ms. Muir. You talked about noise and a fence. I'm guessing that is on the east property, the farm? Okay.
Yes.
I know that's a concern. They asked me about it. Full disclosure, they farm my farm, but they asked me if they could continue their operation, and I guaranteed them that this would not interfere with their operation.
Through you, your worship. Basically, the study was originally taken care of as a result of the rail line. And so from that, they also noted that they need the fence and those clauses. They will cover both the rail and the existing operations.
Good.
So there shouldn't be any issues.
Thank you. Council's pleasure. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Move recommendation.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Malash, support Councillor Akpata, all in favor. That carries unanimously. Thank you. Now we go to our chief. We have a 3-station fire service model supplemental report. Okay, sorry, Mr. Militia has a couple comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, we have a report before council. It's a follow-up to the report what was provided a little earlier. I believe it was the second meeting in January with respect to the three-station fire services model that is an extension of the fire master plan. So again, I'd like to commend again the team here that they've come up with a solution that's supported by some data. Obviously coming from with the use of Dillon Consulting with their fire services arm, as well as public commentary and a financial plan. Generally speaking, the comments that we've received from the public have been positive. We have not had any negative or not near the negative impact that we had with our first two selection sites. We have experienced some questions and concerns, which we've answered back to the folks that were concerned and the residents that had submitted those questions. We obviously have a better operating model. The current operating model that is being proposed covers more area with the 4-and-4 coverage data. And we've also been able to implement that, the program. We have a plan to implement this program with an increase in full-time firefighters. And as well, the report contains a responsible long-term financial plan, which is feasible and is able to be implemented over the long term. So again, those are some high-level comments with respect to the plan. Again, congratulations to all those involved. I think it's a solid plan going forward and provides some excellent, or continues to provide some excellent service, fire services to the community. But with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Thiessen and with the support of Ms. Hadre and Mr. Langlois for the presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. The report before you has been co-authored by Don Hadre, Dale Langlois, and myself. And as Joe mentioned, it covers the public engagement campaign, the high-level fire service operating strategy, and the financial plan. I will present the public engagement and the fire service operating strategy sections, and then Mr. Langlois will present the financial plan. All of us will be available for questions at any time. I understand that you have the report in front of you, but for the interest of the viewing audience, I do want to highlight the main points of the report. Regarding the public engagement, the campaign focuses on building a safer community with the expansion of the fire service. And the campaign communicated that firefighters are currently our neighbors and part of our community. And I'd like to thank the firefighters for participating in the campaign and for serving our community. The public engagement or consultation was held virtually from February 3rd to March 6th, and it was held virtually due to the COVID-19 restrictions. The campaign information was primarily shared on the town website and PlaySpeak, where the residents had an option to respond to the discussion on PlaySpeak or contact the project team by email and or phone directly. The public engagement tactics included a media release, news on the town website, mayor's comments, and the mayor's message newsletter. Details of the report were included as a tax insert, of which 6,850 copies were mailed. A monthly e-blast in both of February and March, in which we had over 3,000 views. 1,000 letters were sent to property owners living within 500 meters from each of the locations. Social media, including Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where combined over 40,000 views and impressions were seen. And on PlaySpeak, we had 747 unique views, 12 comments, and 42 connections. As Joe mentioned, overall, the feedback has a very positive tone, different from the feedback from the previously proposed 2 satellite station model. The 12 comments focused on requesting more information on the location of the 3rd station, as the exact location has not yet been determined, the financial implications for this project, consideration for the noise at the front road location to nearby residents, and the partnering with our emergency services. The PlaySpeak page will continue to be used to provide updates to the community throughout the process as we move forward. Regarding the fire service operating strategy, the latest proposed operating model changed from a 2-station to a 3-station model, and now includes keeping the existing station on Normandy Street, a west substation on Front Road, which is the previous Centennial Arena site, and an east substation on Laurier Parkway. Growth surrounding the existing station and the areas of future growth have resulted in the need for the 3-station model. The proposed station locations have been driven by the NFPA standard requiring 4 firefighters in 4 minutes, 90% of the time in the urban area of our town, and 10 firefighters 80% of the time for the entire geographical area of LaSalle. As seen in table 1 on page 3 of the report, this table illustrates the initial response summary for the different scenarios as it relates to this standard. So starting with the existing situation of LaSalle having 1 fire station, we could cover 28% of the urban area and 33% of the historic 911 calls within a 4-minute response time if we had 4 full-time firefighters. Moving to the proposal of the 2019 Fire Master Plan, which proposed a 2-station model. With this model, we could cover 74% of the urban area, 73% of the historic 911 calls if we had 4 full-time firefighters at both of those locations. And finally, the current proposal, the 3-station model, we can cover 87% of the urban area, 93% of the historic 911 calls once we have 4 full-time firefighters at each of the locations. There are benefits to this 3-station model, including, as just discussed, the improved 4-minute response area coverage, but it also maintains the existing coverage of our current station, including commercial and multi-residential properties, which has significantly increased population density since our latest fire master plan. These additional new substations can be built on town-owned property and undeveloped land, and it eventually will provide coverage for the ultimate build-out of the town, considering both short-term and long-term growth. Administration is planning to keep the existing fire station on Normandy Street as the headquarters station, as it is close to the Civic Center and is in the hub of the Emergency Service Center, including both police and EMS. This location also has a training dome that is of great value to the service and has ample parking for our entire team. Concern with this site, and that is that it is not built to the post-disaster building standard. However, as the substations are built and built to this standard, this becomes less of a concern. Station 2, the West Station on Front Road, is proposed to be the first station to be built. It's important to note that this location in the previous 2-station models was not a suitable location due to its proximity to the Detroit River and resulting lack of a 360-degree response coverage area. However, with the 3-station model, this location suits the town's needs very well. The benefits of this location include immediate decrease in the response times for many residents west of Matchett Road, much quicker response times for planned future growth south of Victory. And this property is town owned and allows for the construction of the substation to start quickly. Station number 3, the East Station on Laurier Parkway, is the second proposed substation to be built. And although its coverage area could immediately improve response time to residents in the northeast portion of town, the coverage area does not affect as many residents as that of station number 2. The rate of growth east of Malden Road will help determine the timing of construction of this substation. And administration is also proposing that this site will be an optimum location for the secondary EOC. In general, both substations will include living quarters, a bedroom area, office space, and apparatus bays. Manning the new substations on their opening day with 2 full-time firefighters would be ideal, but administration does understand the financial impact of this and is proposing a fair and responsible financial plan to phase in these new positions over a number of years. Fast tracking the hiring of full-time firefighters compared to the previous financial plan is important for both health and safety and personal availability reasons. The current fire master plan includes the hiring of 4 administrative positions. We currently have 1 spare office in our existing fire hall. To manage the additional office space requirements, our plan is to move the fire prevention division to station number 2 And when the town hires the additional senior officer position and administrative assistant, it is planned that these positions will work out of station number 2 to provide administrative support at this location. Once additional full-time firefighters are hired and the first substation is built, administration will determine if and when additional volunteer firefighters are required at that time. The existing headquarters station will eventually require some modifications to expand the training room and the sleeping quarters. Once the new substations are built and apparatus is moved to these locations from our existing station, space will become available to allow for these modifications. This is the summary of my report on the public engagement and operating strategy, and I will pass it over to Mr. Langlois.
Thanks, Chief. So I'm going to walk Mayor and Council through the financial plan. If you could turn to Appendix A, please, on page 83. I'll kind of start with, I'll go appendix by appendix. So this appendix here is the capital plan. Now, I just want to mention right off the bat, this plan is a different approach than the 2019 financial plan. We're moving, as the chief mentioned, we're moving from a 2-station model to a 3-station model, which does come at an extra cost compared to the original plan. The original plan was a buildup of $200,000 per year. And as you'll see, as I walk you through this plan, there'll be an incremental increase starting out with $200,000 a year and gradually increasing that over the years. And I'll explain the reasoning. But starting with the capital plan, actually, the capital plan is actually going to cost us a little bit less money than the previous plan. Reason being, with the first substation now being proposed to be located on Front Road, with the town currently owning that property, we'll no longer have to purchase that property. And then second, with the second substation being a substation and the headquarters remaining where it is, that building will be less in size as compared to building a new headquarters, which was in the original plan. So that's, from a capital perspective, it's actually going to cost us less. You'll see the reasoning why we'll have to build up additional funding when we get to the operational side. So just looking at this here spreadsheet, from 2022 to 2026, I call that the short term. So over the next 5 years, the goal of this plan is to design and construct the substation on Front Road, which we're hoping to accomplish in 2023, 2024 time range, at a cost of approximately $4 million. And we'd also like to secure the land for the second substation in the Laurier and Disputed area of town. Also, as the chief mentioned, there'll be requirements for some training room expansion. As we hire the additional, start to hire the additional full-time firefighters, there's going to be more bodies in the existing training room, so that there will be an expansion required. And along with constructing the new substation, there'll be the requirement for an additional support vehicle. At this point in time, we won't require an additional fire truck because we currently have 2. So as the chief mentioned, one will be relocated to Front Road, which will provide us room to expand the training room in the current headquarters station. Another important item to note is when we were looking at how are we going to pay for these changes, you know, it does come at an extra cost. We do have a financial plan for the replacement of existing fire equipment. And when we took a look at that, we're kind of in a buildup phase right now. So that actually allowed us the opportunity to merge that plan and funding buildup with the fire master plan buildup. And given that we're building that funding up right now, that's allowing us to spend that on some of the items in the fire master plan and allows us to start to fund some of these items quicker. So now with the merging of those 2 financial plans, it'll become one master fire plan. So that one line that says fire vehicle and equipment replacement plan, that's just the items that are currently in our asset management plan. In 2025, you'll notice there's a large expenditure. That is for the replacement of the aerial tower truck that we have. And then beyond that, into future years, there's eventually, I think in 2029, there is a replacement of one of the existing fire trucks. So in the short term, that's kind of the goal in the short term. In the midterm, our goal is to start construction on the second substation in 2031. And then also, as we continue to build up staffing and prepare for that, as the chief mentioned, there will be the requirement for some additional sleeping quarters at the headquarters station. Now, the substations are going to be built appropriately to house 4 full-time firefighters, but there is some additional requirements at our headquarters station. So down the road, we're going to have to add some additional living quarters down there. We'll also have the support vehicle purchase for the second substation, and then also an additional fire truck will be required so that there is 1 fire truck at each location. And beyond that, the long term, really, there isn't going to be the need for a lot more capital purchases. We're going to be set. The focus beyond that will be to get to the 4 full-time firefighter force. The funding sources are at the bottom there. We will fund the construction. We plan on funding the construction of the substations through debt issuance, development charges, and then also our fire reserve, which will be built up. So moving along to Appendix B, this is the operational cost. So I'm going to focus right now just on the bottom half of this chart, which lists out the items. So again, in the short term, the goal is to hire 7 additional full-time firefighters. And that's the number to have 2 full-time firefighters at each location, the headquarters and the first substation. So we're looking at hiring 3 in 2024, 2 in 2025, and 2 in 2026. Also a fire prevention officer and training officer to meet current standards. That's been identified outside of this fire master plan. And then an additional training officer in 2026, just to assist with the high amount of training requirements with the additional full-time staff. Again, there's a senior officer position that'll be required for the second substation. Also, we have the annual debt payments. If we're issuing some debt to fund a portion of the first fire substation, be approximately $220,000 a year. And then we have the operating costs of that facility, the utilities, maintenance, etc. Again, we do have 2 additional volunteer firefighters scheduled for 2026, 2028, and 2030. Those are in there just in case they're required, but there's an asterisk. Those positions will be hired if we require them. With the additional full-time firefighters, we may not need to hire additional volunteers. So moving on to the midterm, which is 2027 to 2031. We're looking at hiring, the first 2 years is kind of a build-up year. So we're looking at hiring an additional administrative assistant position. And then once we get closer to the construction of the substation, starting to hire the full-time firefighters. There's an additional 9 full-time firefighters required if we want to have 2 at each location. So the plan is to, in advance of that second substation being constructed, hiring 3 firefighters in 2029, 3 in 2030, and 3 in 2031. So up until the construction is complete, there'd be 3 full-time firefighters at the current headquarters in the first substation at all times. And then once it's complete, we would move some of those firefighters over so that there'd be 2 full-time firefighters at each fire station at all times, which is great for response times and also for health and safety. Again, in the midterm, there will be some debt issuance for the second substation, which is approximately, we're estimating $230,000 annually. And then again, the utilities and maintenance costs, the operational costs for that additional substation. And then beyond, we call it the long term, beyond 2031, as you can see, the only cost that we have in there now at that point in time is that just the continuation of the hiring of full-time firefighters until we reach the required number of 56. Once we reach 56 full-time firefighters over a number of years, that will ensure that we have 4 full-time firefighters on duty at each station at all times. Now, the top part of this spreadsheet here, this is the operational buildup. So as you can see, at the beginning of 2022, the first line is the opening balance, which was 447,000. In this year's budget, we added 200,000, which was according to our plan, to get us to 647,000. Each year, we plan on increasing that by $25,000 a year until we get to 2031, and it's $425,000 a year. So in 2022, $200,000 is approximately 0.52% of a tax rate. And as we move forward, you can see that line at the bottom there, we get up to 0.75% of a tax rate. So it's gradually increased over time. Or as mentioned earlier, our previous fire master plan was $200,000 a year, but to get to that full complement would have taken decades, a lot longer of a period of time. As the chief mentioned, we have to shift our focus. There's no longer the demand to be a volunteer firefighter. So, we need to shift our focus on having a full-time force. And this financial plan will accomplish that over a period of time. So the last appendix that I have is just our reserve account. So as we build up that funding and transfer it over to pay for the different operational items, the unused amount is transferred to the reserve account. So we can think of the reserve account as a savings account. So any unused amount that we've built up, we put into the savings account, and the savings account grows. And then as we purchase capital items and fund it, you can see the third line row down there. That's where we transfer the money out. So again, as an example, in 2025, that aerial tower truck, you can see that we're transferring $2 million out, and that's going to pay for that truck. So as you can see, there's never a negative balance in this reserve account, which is great. We're not going into a deficit to fund this fire master plan. As long as we continue to slowly build up our annual contribution, this financial plan will be sufficient to cover the operational costs and capital costs moving forward. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Open it up to council questions. Councillor Ekpata.
Through to the chief. Chief, I've heard your comments, and you mentioned a few things that, just for the purposes of the viewing audience, you mentioned NFPA regulations. Can you just clarify what that acronym means, sir?
Sure, through you, your worship. NFPA stands for the National Fire Protection Association.
And a supplemental, your worship? And I assume, Chief, that these are regulations that are set, or guidelines that are set, that the municipality should follow to ensure we enhance the safety of the community?
That is correct. They are guidelines 1710 and 1720 respectively.
A supplemental for Mr. Langlois, your worship, if possible. Mr. Langlois, appreciate the financial documents that you've provided. A question: if for some reason that the growth in LaSalle should slow, concurrently, if the town should expand faster, Are there other things that we can do? I've got to believe, Mr. Langlois, knowing your team, that you've thought out a meticulous strategy for the finance. I just want to understand the flexibility if more people decide they want to come to LaSalle, or for some reason LaSalle slows in its growth.
Thank you for the question. Absolutely. If development skyrockets and people start building very fast, that brings in more assessment. With more assessment brings in more tax dollars. With more tax dollars, we can fund this plan quicker and move faster. On the other hand, if the Howard Bouffard area, if something happens in the economy and growth really stops, and we don't have sufficient funding, should council choose, we can lower the annual amount. It'll take a little bit longer to get to that full-time force and accomplish some of these items, but it could just potentially push it off. But at this point in time, as we know, demand's really high, so that's a good thing.
Thank you, Worship. Those are my questions.
Councillor Renault.
Thank you, Your Worship.
I was the first one to do it, wasn't I? Thank you, Your Worship. Question is for Dale. Just in regards to development charges, we see some new development charges coming in to help pay for this. When was the last time that we reviewed them? And when is the next time they'll be set to be reviewed again?
We completed our last development charge study at the end of 2020, and it became effective January 1st, 2021. And there's a new study performed every 5 years. We did take this into account. It's the growth related items. So it's included in the current development charge calculation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. Through you to, I guess we'll start with Chief. How many full-time firefighters do we currently have on staff?
Thank you for the question. We currently have 12 full-time firefighters.
12. And I know we do a lot of training. Are the full-timers involved in all the training, or is it mostly for the volunteers?
The full-time firefighters train just as often as the volunteer firefighters do. So along with these standards, we are required to maintain records of training to provide proof of maintaining our certifications to firefighter 1, firefighter 2, and any additional certifications that they have.
Okay, thank you. So I was just kind of trying to keep track of how many we're looking at hiring and timeline that we have. I know we're looking at no additional firefighters in 2023, and then we start the hiring in 2024. The addition of a senior officer, and I don't know if it was the fire prevention or training officer in 2026, they aren't considered, I guess, full-time, correct? Because they wouldn't respond?
So the senior officer position is not considered a full-time firefighter. And the fire prevention officer that's mentioned in this fire master plan, as well as the training officer, they are, that they can respond. They are on the suppression side of the fire service. However, they work 8-hour shifts. They're not considered full-time firefighters working the 24-hour shifts. So that would be over and above the full-time firefighter hiring that is proposed today.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess more for the viewing audience, because I feel like we gave them a heck of a lot of information here today. Within 2 years, the plan is to have the substation built or almost completed, as well as the location purchased and announced for the third station. Is that correct? I don't know who wants that one.
That's correct. We plan, once approved, we're going to start designing for the construction of the substation. And once that's ready to go, we'll start the construction. Now, we all know that there's supply chain issues, so it may take a little longer than usual, but we're going to move as soon as possible on that. And then also we'll begin looking at the best location for the second substation land. But
Okay, and then Councillor Akapata asked my question about growth in our third station being 2031. So my final thing, maybe we could address one more time to the viewing audience is I've received several residents' concerns with our selection of location number 2, which is a great location and it's town-owned land and it makes sense financially for us to move forward. It's just trying to get them to understand how we've shifted our reasoning from before half of the coverage area is in the water. Now half the coverage area is in the water, but we're okay because we have 3 stations. So if we can just elaborate on that a little bit more, just so that our residents fully understand why we're agreeing after this many years to that second location, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Chief?
Yeah, so I can definitely start. So thank you for the question. That is a fair question. There has been, like you said, a lot of conversation and why in the past this was not a good location. So the previous proposals had a 2-station model in which the existing station was no longer going to be occupied. And as a result, the coverage area of the existing station also needed to be covered by these 2 new stations. Having decided to keep the existing station in operation, it not only maintains coverage of our existing coverage area, but it allows for the 2 additional substations to be moved further away from the core of the town. So it allows it to be moved southeast and northwest. And as a result, this location becomes very suitable. In fact, the Dillon Consulting did the analysis, and they used a specialized software which determines the coverage area based on the road mapping and the speeds and the number of intersections of our road system. And basically the only constraint that we put in on this model was the existing location of the location of our existing fire station, and the optimal model or locations for the fire stations using that software was basically, within 1 kilometer of that site or half a kilometer of the old Centennial Arena site. And as you could see in table 1, we are seeing extremely good values in our coverage area. In fact, this level of coverage far exceeds what the consultants would use as a target for coverage area. We're basically being told that if a municipality had a 75% coverage area, that would be considered a win, and this far exceeds that. So we have no problems or concerns with the location of the old arena site at this time.
Thank you, Chief. That I think you answered a lot of questions that people were asking, why we went from not wanting that site with the John Dupree Park and Matchett and Laurier to now. But I think you've answered all those questions, including the lack of retention for paid on call firefighters. Thank you. Any other council questions? Council's pleasure. Councilor Reno.
I'll move the recommendation.
Moved by Councilor Reno, support Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Chief and Mr. Langwa. Now we go to item G1, information items to be received, the 2021 schedule of council and board member remuneration. Mr. Langwa.
happy to answer any questions.
Council's pleasure. Councillor Reno.
I'll move the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Reno, support Councillor Dicho Spagnolo. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Summary of reports to council. Moved by Deputy Mayor Malash, support Councillor Akpata. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Bylaws, we have 5 bylaws and just want to note a correction on bylaw 8678. The name should not be what is written there. They should be George Linner and Karen Linner. All 3 readings, all 5 bylaws, moved by Councillor Dicho Spagnolo, support Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Council questions. Councillor Reno, first one in reunited meeting in council chambers.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure if we have anybody online, possibly Peter, that might be able to answer a question I've gotten from a few residents. We've waited a long time for a dog park and everybody's very excited to get the dogs out there. I know the wet season is still upon us. I just wanted to know if there's any type of plan to get those gates open and to share this new tool with our residents.
Mr. Mara.
I would like to leave this one for Mr. Osborne, but since I came on, I will take care of it. So certainly we are reviewing that as the weather starts to turn on us and it starts to go for the better. We are working with our parks group to ensure that we have some stable or some sufficient growth with grass. If we don't, we will have to be reseeding throughout the year and it's not very conducive. So we can get back to council and back to the community. If you give us an opportunity to take a look at how the weather changes over the next couple of weeks, we can probably provide some sort of indication on when the gates will open and things of that nature. So with that, we will report back to council on that through Ms. Hodre's area, through social media and through our communications.
Thank you, that's appreciated.
Any other council questions? Seeing none, statement by council members. Reports from committees. Notices of motion. Confirm or tell you bylaw. All 3 readings. Councillor Reno. Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor. That carries. We have a schedule of meetings coming up. Before meetings adjourn, I just want to thank council members who are here this evening. The other 2 could not make it. Thank you for reviewing the audience, and hopefully as the future looks brighter, we can get into regular council meetings and have the public attend.